The message arrived late on a quiet Sunday morning, 3 weeks before my mother's wedding. It wasn't an invitation. It was a sentence. A cold, deliberate dismissal, delivered in a handful of carefully chosen words. My mother, Carol, was marrying for the 3rd time. And, as always, she wanted it to be the crowning performance of her life. Every dress fitting, every floral arrangement, every social media post scheduled in advance, it was all meant to show the world that she had won at everything. And then her text cut through that illusion like a scalpel. Darling, I've had to make some cuts. I'm afraid your new position is simply too distracting. We need this day to be about me, not your success. It's nothing personal. It was, of course, the most personal rejection I had ever received. My own mother had uninvited me from her wedding because my success stole too much attention. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had done everything right. She wanted to shine alone. And she expected me to pay for it. That was the moment I decided that when the spotlight found her, it wouldn't glorify her, it would expose her. If you've ever been the scapegoat in your family, if your achievements have ever been twisted into threats, or your kindness weaponized against you, this story is for you. Hit like if you believe silence is the sharpest power, and subscribe, because this is the story of what happens when a narcissist finally meets her match. My name is Sarah, and my life was dictated by the roles my mother assigned. For her, everything was theater, and we were the supporting cast. My existence was never celebrated, it was compared. I was the scapegoat, too logical, too quiet, too unwilling to worship her reflection. I didn't fit her perfect image. My older sister, Lisa, was the golden child, pretty, charming, endlessly devoted to Mom's version of truth. In Carol's story, Lisa was the graceful success, the one who married well, stayed nearby, and reflected well on her. I, on the other hand, was the difficult one, moved 3 states away, built a career Mom couldn't even pronounce, and made a name for myself without her help. I worked in corporate financial compliance, a field Mom once called paperwork for people with no social life. That work gave me a master's degree, financial independence, and a keen understanding of exactly where people like Carol and her fiancé Victor cut corners. I didn't know it yet, but that knowledge would become my sharpest weapon. Victor, her newest project, was everything she thought screamed status: handsome, foreign, impeccably dressed, just mysterious enough to make her friends jealous. He spoke of international trade as if he ran an empire, though I suspected he barely managed his own bills. Their wedding, her 3rd, was a 3-day spectacle. The reception alone cost more than my first condo, and the honeymoon, a 2-week luxury escape to the Maldives, was all for show, filtered, hashtagged, wrapped in fragile perfection. 3 months before the big event, I hit a career milestone, promoted to director at a major investment firm, 6-figure bonus, featured in a national business magazine. I should have seen it coming. The moment that article went live, Mom's congratulations turned sour. Her voice, dripping with jealousy under a honeyed tone, said, "Oh, Sarah, you sound so busy. Are you even going to have time for family things anymore? Not everyone enjoys being overshadowed." She wasn't asking, she was warning. The calls grew more frequent, sharpened by resentment. "You'll have to be careful at the wedding," she teased once. "It's Mom's day, not your victory lap." And then that text came, the one that disinvited me. I stared at it, rereading each word. Each cut deeper than the last. It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. She was saying, "You don't fit in my story anymore." But just when I thought she couldn't go lower, she proved me wrong. 2 days later, another message appeared. Short, cold, transactional. "Since you won't be attending, and you know how expensive the honeymoon is, it's customary for guests who can't make it to send a substantial gift. Victor and I have already upgraded our Maldives suite, so if you could contribute $5,000, I'll know you're not bitter about being left out." My fingers tightened around my phone until the plastic creaked. It wasn't just cruel. It was parasitic. She had turned my exclusion into a transaction. For years, I knew my mother's affection came with strings. But this was the first time it had a price tag. I glanced at my bank account, brimming with my recent bonus. I could have wired the money and moved on. But the thought of funding her fantasy honeymoon while I sat home, ignored and humiliated, made my blood run cold. That familiar, creeping voice of self-doubt whispered, "Maybe she's right. Maybe you're just money to her. Maybe you're the problem." The whisper didn't last. It morphed into something sharper, colder. Fury. Focused, icy fury. For 24 hours, I wrestled with it. Part of me wanted to pay just to deny her the satisfaction of calling me petty. But my rational mind shouted louder, "Don't give in." I called Lisa, desperate for an ally or at least a witness. "She's asking for $5,000, I said, forcing a laugh that caught in my throat, for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. Lisa exhaled, that golden child patience in her voice I despised. "Oh, Sarah, don't make this a fuss. It's Mom. She knows you can afford it. Just send the money, write a sweet note, and be happy. Don't make waves, it's her last chance at happiness." That phrase, "don't make waves," had been my childhood soundtrack. It kept Mom comfortable and me invisible. Her motto, protecting her ego while suffocating my voice. I hung up and looked around my quiet apartment, the home I'd built through grit and sleepless nights. Every inch a testament to my fight out of her shadow. For the first time in years, I realized, I owed Carol nothing. Not my silence, my money, or my obedience. This apartment, the product of relentless ambition, was mine. Carol wanted me to surrender my power and fund her dreams. That's when clarity struck. I wouldn't pay. I wouldn't plead. I'd wield the one thing she respected, consequence. Carol thought my professional success was just a title. I would show her it was control. She wanted her wedding perfect, untouchable, defined by a Maldives honeymoon, my perfect target. I straightened at my desk, pain transforming into cold, diamond-hard resolve. Carol wanted me to feel exclusion. I would make her feel public shock. I pulled out my secure work phone and texted Daniel Peterson, forensic risk partner and friend. High priority, off the books. Need emergency deep dive on Victor Groom's last name. International assets, tax compliance, Maldives travel. Find the gap. Daniel's reply was immediate, professional, respectful. He knew it was personal, but honored my approach. Give me 48 hours. Those days were electric. My work continued, but my mind raced. I understood wealth's hidden channels, where compliance cracks lurked. I wanted negligence, not error. When Daniel called, his tone was impressed yet calm. "Victor is cleaner than most, but there's one thing, an unreported $150,000 offshore transfer 6 months ago. Just under automatic red flag. Minor compliance issue, not a crime. Here's the key. For Maldives travel, all high-value assets must be declared. Victor failed to declare this offshore account. An anonymous tip to customs could trigger secondary screening, even brief questioning. My heart didn't race. It froze with precise satisfaction. Perfect. The issue was minor enough to avoid real legal trouble, but enough to shatter Carol's perfect honeymoon illusion. She wanted $5,000 for her upgrade. I was about to deliver total cancellation. I sharpened the plan until it was surgical, untraceable, bureaucratically plausible, and timed to the minute. I built the anonymous tip like a clinical dossier, dry, exact language, transaction records cropped and annotated so they looked like they'd come from someone with privileged access. No fingerprints, no ties back to me, burner addresses, layered VPNs, and phrasing that would trigger a compliance escalation. The wedding was Saturday. The flight left at 2:10 a.m. Sunday. 3 hours before takeoff was the sweet spot, late enough that an overnight agent would be reviewing oddities, early enough to stop him at the gate but too late for any tidy cancellation. On the night I watched from my small apartment while Lisa flooded my screen with manic story after story. Carol gleamed in lace and jewels, posed and polished, every smile an advertisement for her own contentment. Victor stood beside her, smiling as if it were his job. I felt none of the old ache, only a quiet, precise satisfaction as the clock slid toward my chosen hour. The ceremony emptied, the reception broke into its staged exit. Carol and Victor climbed into the waiting car and waved, the scene perfected for a cinematic farewell. At 10:55 p.m. my finger hovered over the send key. This was the moment that turned intent into action. I thought of Carol's earlier text, "I'll know you're not bitter," like a gauntlet tossed. At 11 p.m. I hit send. The tip went into the system and into the machinery I'd targeted. Then the waiting began. Silence stretched taut. Had the message reached the right desk? Would it be ignored? My nerves hummed until, at 1:30 a.m., my phone lit up. Lisa's voice was raw, fractured airport noise and frantic shouting bleeding in behind her words. "They pulled him at customs," she cried. "They're saying undeclared assets, suspicious trades. They took his passport." Mom's hysterical. "The flight leaves in 20 minutes. I let the commotion wash over me while I stayed steady. "Detained?" I asked, voice deliberately level. "Sounds serious, maybe something flagged in his travel profile." Then, in a flat, controlled tone, I closed the loop between her cruelty and my answer. "Tell her I'm sorry I missed the wedding. Tell her that's my gift. Luxury trips are inconvenient for my schedule, I'll keep the $5,000 in savings." I hung up before she could respond. What followed wasn't emptiness but a private victory. I hadn't gotten an apology, but I'd gotten something cleaner, proof that Carol's carefully constructed bliss could be ruptured and seen. She had asked me to pay for her grandeur. I used my leverage to convert that demand into her public embarrassment. Victor was detained for questioning for 48 hours. Investigators eventually labeled the matter a compliance issue minor, not criminal, yet by then their Maldives plans were irrevocably ruined. Carol spent the first week of her marriage trapped in a mediocre airport hotel while forms were signed and statements taken. The glossy story of the wedding unspooled into a newsfeed of financial hitches and awkward explanations. The revenge required no theft, no physical harm, only timing, information, and the understanding that systems can be turned against those who abuse them. It wasn't about the money, it was about recognition. Carol had tried to demean me, to turn my existence into a bank account she could exploit. By engineering a moment that exposed her vulnerability publicly, I showed the power she feared was real and that I could wield it. So tell me, did Carol get what she deserved for banishing her own daughter? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you like stories where the quiet sibling engineers a flawless, clinical comeuppance, hit like and subscribe for more slow, precise payoffs.